I am Richard, known to the world as Coeur de Lion the Lionheart. Born the third son of King Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine, I was raised to rule, yet I never knew a moment of peace. From a young age I was trained not only to lead but to fight. My life, from the moment I could wield a sword, was shaped by the clash of steel, the desire for power, and the pursuit of glory. This is the story of my life, of a king who walked the earth as if it were his kingdom, whose name was whispered in fear by his enemies and honored by his allies. A man who lived for the sound of battle and the call of the crusade. I was born in Oxford, England on September 8, 1157, the third son of Henry II, the formidable King of England, and Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful and influential women of her time. My early years were spent mostly in Aquitaine, my mother's lands in the south of France, where I learned to rule over vast territories, yet I always felt the weight of my father's ambitions pressing upon me. My brothers, Henry and Geoffrey, were more immediate threats to my inheritance, and I, too, knew that power would not come without strife. I was raised in the turbulent courts of my parents, where feuds, both political and familial, were commonplace. My father was a man of vast ambition, holding dominion over England, much of France, and parts of Wales and Ireland. Yet, for all his power, his iron hand in ruling never brought peace to our family. My brothers and I were often pawns in a larger game of intrigue. But it was Eleanor, my mother, who shaped much of my early character. A woman of unparalleled strength and beauty, she taught me not only the strategies of rule, but also the ideals of chivalry, courtly love, and knightly valor. Her influence instilled in me a deep respect for honor and justice, even though the harsh realities of war and power would soon teach me that those ideals were often impossible to uphold. Though I had a deep love for my mother and her lands, it was my father's shadow that loomed over my young life. By the time I was a teenager, I was already a seasoned warrior, having led troops in the defense of my mother's territories against rebellious barons. Still, despite my growing experience, I was always reminded that I was only a prince, a title with no real power, for my father's grip on the throne was absolute. The frustrations of my youth came to a head when I joined my brothers, Henry the young king and Geoffrey, in open rebellion against our father in 1173. We sought greater independence from Henry II, but our revolt was swiftly crushed. Though we failed, the experience taught me a valuable lesson. The cost of power is betrayal and treachery, but such costs can be justified by the ambition that drives one to take it. My father, ever the master of diplomacy, forgave me, but I knew that the scars between us would never heal. I was a young man full of fire and longing for glory, and I could not accept being a mere vassal to my father's empire. Little did I know that this would be a story of rising to power and watching it slip away time and time again. In 1189, after my father's death, I ascended to the throne of England. But my heart was not in England, it was in the Holy Land. The call of the Crusades was a fire that had long burned within me. Jerusalem, the Eternal City, had been lost to Saladin in 1187, and I knew that it was my destiny to reclaim it for Christendom. Within months of my coronation, I departed for the Third Crusade. My father's death had left me with a heavy crown, but the crown was hardly my concern. I was consumed by the vision of battle, by the dream of taking Jerusalem and restoring it to Christian hands. Before setting sail, I negotiated a marriage to Berengaria of Navarre, but even as I took a wife, my heart was already on the battlefield. The journey to the Holy Land was a long one, fraught with dangers. My first stop was Sicily, where I spent time asserting my authority over the island's rebellious Norman rulers. From there, I sailed to Cyprus, where the island's ruler Isaac Komnenos insulted me. I captured him, and with swift action, I seized control of Cyprus, making it my base of operations. It was here that my crusading spirit shone brightest. Cyprus was an invaluable asset for my army as I marched toward my ultimate goal, Jerusalem. In 1191, I arrived in the Holy Land, and it wasn't long before I was embroiled in battle. The Siege of Acre was my first major campaign. The city was a crucial port and fortress in the struggle for control over the Holy Land, and its siege was long and grueling. The Saracen forces led by Saladin had held it for years, but under my leadership we finally breached the walls. Yet, victory was bittersweet, as infighting between the Crusader leaders threatened to undo everything I had fought for. After the capture of Acre, I was left as the de facto leader of the Crusader forces. Saladin, the brilliant and respectful commander of the Saracens, knew that I was his most dangerous adversary. The Crusaders, disunited and weary, still had an advantage in morale, and I pressed forward. The march toward Jerusalem began. Saladin and I met on the battlefield at Arsuf in 1191, where I led my men to a decisive victory. The battle was a victory not just of arms, but of resolve. Though I had not yet reached Jerusalem, the victory gave my troops the confidence they needed to continue the fight. But my ambitions were tempered by the reality of war. Jerusalem remained elusive, and though we came within striking distance, I was forced to negotiate with Saladin in 1192. The truce we agreed upon allowed Christians access to the holy sites but left Jerusalem firmly in the hands of the Saracens. My journey back to England was fraught with misfortune. On my return from the Holy Land, I was shipwrecked in the Adriatic Sea and taken captive by Leopold of Austria. This was a blow that none could have foreseen. I was held for ransom by the Holy Roman Emperor, Henry VI, and for over a year, my people waited anxiously as my mother, Eleanor, fought tirelessly to raise the ransom money. The English people, taxed to the brink, eventually paid a king's ransom to free their king. Upon my return, I faced another struggle, reasserting my authority over the Angevin Empire. My brother John had been plotting against me, seeking to usurp my throne, and I had to confront him once more. However, my time in England was short-lived, for my heart belonged to France, and the battles there were far from over. I returned to France, where I spent my final years in battle with King Philip II of France. The kingdom that had once been mine was slowly slipping away under Philip's strategic brilliance, and though I fought valiantly, I knew that the future of the Angevin Empire was uncertain. My final campaign was in the south of France, where I was besieging a small castle in Calais. It was here that fate, cruel and unyielding, caught up with me. A crossbow bolt struck me in the shoulder, and though I continued to fight, the wound became infected. My days were numbered. On April 6, 1199, I died in my mother's arms. My death was not the death of a warrior in battle, but of a king who had spent his life in the pursuit of glory. My body was laid to rest at Fontevraud Abbey, beside my father and my mother. Though I am gone, my name endures. To the people of England, I am a hero, a symbol of strength and courage. To my enemies, I was a terrifying force who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. But to me, the crown was always secondary to the battlefield. I lived and died with a sword in my hand, with the desire for conquest burning in my soul. I am Richard, King of England, the Lionheart, and my legacy is one of war, glory, and the unyielding pursuit of destiny.